I would think we do need to develop alternative protection systems for innovations. Again, we can separate off, and I'm not sure where we draw the boundaries exactly, but innovations that are meeting key welfare goals for humanity should be treated in a different way to, say, cosmetics. Further to this, we need to remove the barriers to entry in key industries, particularly thinking of the pharmaceutical industry. But this connects to the intellectual property system. It's extremely costly, and it requires a great deal of expertise to navigate. So that also prevents the entry of small companies. And again, this is a theme that's running across the conference. Individual changes need to be made to our consumption and production patterns. And again, I'm not mentioning anything particularly radical here. These are all things that have been recognised within the international agreements. So, what does this require? Again, these are the suggestions that have come from the international documents directly. Again, you can see, like I say, I'm not saying anything really different to them. They want technology transfer, increased flows of knowledge, exchange of scientific information, capacity building for national research and development, institutional capacity building, adaptation of technologies, regulatory assistance, and market interventions and changes to the terms of trade. So what does this require? Quite simply, it requires shifts in national attitudes, policies, and actions. It requires these changes to the international system, particularly in the trade and intellectual property regimes, to affect distribution of and access to key knowledge, goods, and services. And it requires changes in individual behaviour. I just want to pick up on a second quote here. This is from the 2010, so the most recent report from the UN Secretary General on progress with the Millennium Development Goals. Here he's calling for a new sustainable development paradigm. I would actually disagree. We already have the paradigm there, we're just not making use of it. But again, he's calling for key sectors, and by which he particularly means developed states, to come to understand the nature and gravity of the challenge and seize the opportunity to revise their agendas. I'll come back to this report a bit later on. So, how does the current management of science and innovation fit into this? It's based essentially on a competitive and short-term approach, which is not compatible with sustainable development. The existing systems, so like I said, the trading system, but general international systems, serve to entrench power relations that already exist. They've been designed in a particular way to serve particular interests of the powerful states, and like I mentioned before, the powerful states also are able to manipulate these processes much more than poorer states are able to. They provide disproportionate benefits to a minority of states, and they contribute to development failures. So these are some of the important dynamics in current science and innovation management. This continued concentration of research and development in developed nations, which contributes to the deep and persistent knowledge divides which are increasing. It shifts away from public funding in key public good areas such as agricultural research, which causes, and I'm not necessarily trying to blame industry for pursuing market goals, it's simply a natural sort of process. If you restrict public funding, then research increasingly becomes dominated by commercial interests. And we have an intellectual property system that's linking innovation to market incentives, and thus obstructs access to knowledge and products. So in summary, this represents failures to fulfill commitments. These are another couple of reports from UN Secretary Generals. So it's not that this is not recognised. I think this is a particular thing to emphasise, is that these are not just matters of nice wording. These are matters of life and death. So a bit more to explain why this is happening, and I go back to this thing about the conceptions of interests. So the current conception of interest is that we do need to compete with each other, that it's all about gaining economic growth because this will give us power, It gives you political power, and we need to compete and we need to keep growing. This quote picks up on this. So basically, states are incentivized within the political system to keep pursuing political and economic power and to ignore long-term interests, which I've then come up with this sort of diagram which to me explains what's going on within the international system and what sort of rebalancing needs to take place. So there is interdependence, and we recognise this, and there's particularly independence in the environment and development spheres. That's very clear. And that produces this imperative that we must cooperate. However, states are balancing that against imperatives that lead them to seek power and to compete economically. And until we can balance or rebalance this so that the imperative to cooperate becomes stronger, states are just going to continue this behaviour. And like I say, they've been saying they'll change this, and they've been recognising they absolutely need to change this for 40 years, and they've not moved very far along that road. Am I sure how this will happen? No. I think there's some suggestion that it may just take a crisis, a really severe crisis, to prompt this. But that's probably too late. And again, this quote comes from the most recent report on the Millennium Development Goals. They set the Millennium Development Goals up in 2000. These were supposed to be achieved by 2015. Some have been mentioned before. They are things like reducing hunger, addressing HIV, malaria, improving education, doing gender empowerment. So that some commitments that were slightly ambitious, probably, but not unachievable. However, are they going to be achieved? Probably not. Movement has been made towards meeting some of them, but we will fall short, and that needn't have happened. And this is the point that's being made. This was not because it wasn't achievable, it's not because the time was too short, but because states continue not to fulfill their commitments, they don't give the resources that they promised to, and they just show insufficient interest in sustainable development. So in this case, what needs to be done? So again, due to my particular international focus, so states need to change their attitudes and behaviour. They need to convert their commitments into action. It requires leadership. I recognise this is a very difficult thing for national governments to do. It's going to be very unpopular with your electorate. If you start pursuing the longer term goals, you may get thrown out of power. This is sort of inherent in short-term democratic systems, that you pursue short-term goals. You want to show that you will have grown the economy in 5 years' time, not in 20. You want to show that you're pursuing the interests of your citizens, not the interests of humanity. Furthermore, and has been picked up on before, it requires action from civil society. It could usefully benefit from improved coordination between developing countries, and I particularly mean within international processes and international negotiations. If they can work as a bloc, they have more chance of balancing the power of other states. They also can, as a bloc, put blocks on negotiations. This is happening in the trade system, for example. However, that is extremely difficult to do again. There's a sort of divide and rule system going on. Strong states can put enormous pressures, particularly trade pressures, on developing states, persuading them to back down on some of their demands. We also need, though, to have increased transparency in international negotiations, so that, again, particularly in the trade area, a lot has gone on behind closed doors before you even get to the negotiating table. These are meetings that not all countries can get to or get their representatives to. So this fits in with the next point, that we need more equal representation of developing countries in international forums. Now, technically, international forums do represent each nation equally. However, if you're a developing nation, you can probably not afford to be sending more than 1 or 2 people to each international forum. You may only actually afford to have a couple of people in Geneva who have to deal with several different issues in several different forums. And again, when there are these complex negotiations going on, that means you can't be in all the rooms in all the negotiations. And again, this is something that states have committed to in international treaties. They've said we will provide the additional financial resources to ensure that there is more equal representation. And it's not happening. This last point is really what I see from coming from civil society as a sort of moral pressure. When I say there are these massive gaps between commitments and actions, it should be clear and easy to try and start shaming some countries about this. So that's where I see a key role coming there. I just want to slightly separate off from this general what needs to be done to looking at what I think the scientific community can contribute. And these are some suggestions from Agenda 21. The scientific community can have particular roles in the promotion and education of training and scientists, strengthening scientific infrastructure, and so on. And I think the important thing to note is this is something the scientific community is taking on and has taken on. But on its own, without the government support, it can only get so far. Okay, I think I'm doing fine for time, but I'm getting towards the end anyway. My conclusion, unfortunately, is perhaps a little pessimistic. But the fact is the major impediments to timely and effective state action for moves towards sustainable development remain strong. If management of innovation compatible with sustainable development is achieved, I think it's going to take many more years, many decades probably. And this will be too late for many people. It may be too late for all of us. To return to what I see as the moral dimension of this. This is a summary from a previous paper that dealt with some of these issues. So despite this long-standing concern in the international community, and in fact, while its sustainable development concerns maybe go back 40 years, it has had longer development concerns. So we can talk 50, 70 years that things have been being articulated and not acted upon. And yes, I do think this is morally an unacceptable situation. We already have the wealth, knowledge and resources to be meeting the basic needs of all, and yet still millions are dying, millions more are ill and unable to fulfill their potential. And again, not just me saying this. This is Keeping the Promise. So this was not the report on progress with Millennium Development Goals, but it was another report by the UN Secretary General. He's trying to shame states into action. And I think the point I want to end on, there was some mention that this New Earth Summit may take place in 2 years' time. I really don't want to see another declaration. Grand declarations have been made before. What states need to do is go back and look at the commitments they have made and start acting on them. Thank you.